Welcome to Shade and the City. It's your girl Treese. And of course, y'all know what time I'm on. When you get the high bun and the veins, you already know what time I'm on, okay? And we are here to cover Beyond the Gates, Season 1, Episode 119 and 120, y'all, okay? So that would have been Monday and Tuesday's episode. All right, so please do me a favor. Go ahead and hit that like button, okay? And if you are not already and you feeling the vibe and feeling my foolishness, please go ahead and subscribe as well, okay? So yeah, y'all, let's get into it and let's get shady. Okay, y'all. So I knew I forgot to tell y'all something. Okay. So forgive me. This recap will not have screenshots from the show just because, as y'all know, I'm playing catch up and I'm just trying to get it out to y'all so I can get caught up on everything. Okay. So I apologize for that, but it's all love. We'll be back to regular scheduled programming very soon. Okay. So let's jump into episode 119 first. All right. So we see Martin. He's complimenting Samantha on her job as a brand ambassador because they down at the country club waiting for Chelsea and Kat. And so he's like, where they at? Where the Chelsea cat? Where they at? You know what I'm saying? And so Madison is still trying to get in touch with Chelsea, but to no avail. And so Vernon is trying to convince everyone, nah, she's fine. And then Anita gets an alert that Chelsea's made a post. So, they feel like, okay, but then Anita realizes, but because of what she said in the post, they realize, that this was scheduled. This ain't really Chelsea like live, right? So Vernon suggests that, Kat go ahead with the launch without her. She was like, I can't do that. Technically, this is her bag. I'm just marketing. I can't do that without my girl. And so Nicole confirms Chelsea is not at the club. So Naomi goes to do what she does best, and she gonna call Deputy Do Good. And this is when we actually need him to do good, right? And so Kat instructs Madison, well, you stay here at the Dupree house, and I'm gonna go check at the Boom Boom room and see if I can find any clues. And so that's where she runs off to, right? So now we see Chelsea. Okay. Poor girl done woke up in a small room chained to a bed like she's in a film. And if you know, you know. But I absolutely said this is giving a misery tease. Okay. Let me know if y'all agree with me. For those that are old enough to remember Misery, this was definitely giving a misery tease. Okay. So back at the country club, Samantha is just telling Martin that, I'm just so happy that you're back in the house. And, it's easier for me and Tyrell to try to parent trap you and dad. And so Martin said, I'm back, but me and your daddy ain't back together. All right. And so he's like, don't worry about it. Samantha's like, don't worry about it. He gonna change his mind. All right. And so Martin says, well, I hope so too. I hope so. So then he asked about, I seen that little boy. I seen him. He was around there circling your table and whatnot. What's that about? And so Samantha is, being a little hesitant at first to say anything. And then Martin said, look, our deal about dating was you got to be full transparency. All right. So Samantha said, look, his name is Nathan and he hasn't asked me out yet. Okay. I won't see Nathan. So now, and hopefully he don't look like Tyrell, because And when is Jessica coming back? I don't know. I just literally his most random thought. When is Jessica coming back? I feel like when I do this to my hair, my eyes just automatically look bigger. Maybe because it's pulled up and pulled back. I don't know, but I feel like maybe that's why Allison's eyes. Anyway, I'm sorry. That was a random thought. Sorry, went off topic. Back at the Dupree house, Madison starts to become frantic, and Naomi and Jacob are, obviously trying to calm her down. And Jacob has already filed a police report, and Danny said that she already got the security. I believe his name is George, pulling tapes. So everyone wants to believe that, this is just a false alarm, and of course they're gonna, find Chelsea. Danny is talking to Vernon, and she tells him that, even though we out here being optimistic, I really believe something's wrong. Because Chelsea would miss her big day. And so Vernon assures her that, look, we're gonna figure it out. And Jacob's viewing the tapes and going over to the studio to look for clues. So apparently he gonna go over there and find Cat. Which then Danny gets a text from Bill waiting for the launch to start, and he's worried because he's like, "Yo, I can't reach Chelsea." Now, Cat goes over to the boom boom room. Yes, I said what I said. It's the boom boom room to me, okay? Because that's where all the boom boom goes down on the couch. So she's looking for Chelsea, but finds Jacob instead. But they noticed that the car is still in the driveway. And so Jacob was like, well, maybe she took a car service. And then he said, but I did notice one thing. And I said, well, what did you notice? And then, they cut the commercial. And I was like, well, why'd you do that? Chelsea is still spazzing out because she's still chained to this bed. And so she starts to have this hallucination about having a conversation with her mother down at the country club. She's confused on, how am I here? And then she realizes, oh, this ain't real. And so, oh, I'm still stuck in this cabin, but I'm in my head for real. So then Danny pops up and basically advises her, you know what? It's same thing advice I gave you with modeling, right? Be who they want, be a chameleon, tell her what she needs to hear, and work your angles like your life depends on it. And I said, that girl is out here fighting for her life. But okay, I like the way she spun it. But literally, Danny struts off in the hallucination, leaving Chelsea confused. Like, what type of advice was that, mama? Kat is really, really going through it. Because she's at the boom boom room and she realized, oh, I came in here and I was touching stuff and I didn't have gloves on or whatever. So they did end up finding Chelsea's phone, but Jacob was like, well, maybe she just forgot it. And so Kat said, do you know who Chelsea is? She said they had her and Chelsea and her phone have a long-term committed codependent relationship. Okay. So Jacob said, you're right. You're right about that. And he said, well, just don't touch anything else. I'm gonna call forensics. So Kat decides to update her family and reports that, Chelsea ain't here, but they did find the phone. So everyone immediately knows, okay, there's something really wrong if Chelsea left her phone behind. And then Jacob lets him know, hey, we have an official missing persons case. And so Vernon asks, well, has the FBI been notified? And Jacob says, they have. And he's also called in a K9 unit and is asking Kat over the phone, well, can you access Chelsea's phone? And Kat's like, you know what? I ain't even think about that. And I was like, if she's always on her phone, why wouldn't you think to go? But okay. And so she's like, I'm getting ready to do that and I'm gonna call you back. And I was like, well, Kat, that's where you messed up, Miss True Crime Podcast. I love you, girl. No shade, sis, but that should have been one of the first things, okay? Danny is very upset at this point. And so she picks up the phone and calls Bill. And Bill lets her know, like, look, I don't know what's going on, but this crowd is getting restless. And so Danny tells him, look, Chelsea missed a champagne toast. I don't know what to tell you. So Bill's like, well, I know I stopped by to see her before, but everything seemed all right. So Danny said, look, Chelsea's gone, okay? And so Bill said, don't even worry about it. I'm on it. But I love to see when Bill and Danny unite. And it's for their child. So they're absolutely supposed to. Anita comes out and says, well, trying to calm everybody down. She's like, well, one of the things that we have in our favor is Chelsea's social media presence. And, they think that this would hopefully lead them to Chelsea. But Danny says, no, it actually might make things worse because now you have 2 million suspects. And I said, well, so Madison tells him, no, we only got one. And it's Allison. Okay. So then Chelsea finally, Chelsea is hearing footsteps in the dark. You know what I mean? I keep hearing footsteps, baby. So she hears, something creeping and she's like, Allison, I know that's you, you crazy. And so of course, Allison comes in the room. I knew this was proof that you wanted me all along. And I said, well, we knew it was her, so I can't say I'm surprised, right? But she's real life crazy. Like I was literally debating in my head. I said, which one is worse, Leslie or Allison? Let me know in the chat. I'm gonna make that a poll tomorrow. I would love to know which one do y'all think. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put it on the community board. Which one is worse, Leslie or Allison? Jacob had secured a warrant to go through Chelsea's phone at this point. So Kat gives Jacob the password, and as she's putting her gloves on and she getting ready to become junior deputy do good. So he's looking through it, but he said, nothing is really jumping out at me. And so he tries to get Kat to leave, but she refuses because she's like, please let me help. This is my cousin, my best friend, my sister, like, please. And so then, they start looking for signs of a struggle all over the boom boom room. Okay. Now, at this point, Chelsea is like, you know what? I need to knock back out so I ain't got to deal with this heifer, right? So she goes back into one of her hallucinations where she's back at the country club and now she's chained to a table. Okay. That's when Kat walks in with her true crime podcast knowledge and tells Chelsea that, you have more power than you think. She informs Chelsea that where most captors mess up is underestimating the victim and that her mind is her strongest tool. And she comes out of this hallucination to find Allison telling her, "You're so smart, Chelsea, and so beautiful. And I love you. I love you." Petting her like a dog and shit. So Chelsea said, "Bitch, chaining me to a bed is not okay." Allison said, "Well, that's just so you wouldn't leave." And she said, I don't want to hurt you. At least I hope I don't hurt you. Chelsea reminds her that, okay, well, did you really have to do this on like the biggest night of my life? Allison apologizes and said, but Van Gogh sold more paintings dead than alive. And I said, oh, Chelsea, you should be very afraid. So, but she said, oh, but don't worry about it. I don't plan to unalive you. Chelsea asked her, why are you doing this? And so Allison said, because, you told me that I made you feel again, that I made you realize what you wanted, but you forgot. And so I'm going to wait till it comes back to you. Chelsea tells her we were never some great love story and reminds her, baby, we were just hooking up. She reminds Allison that you were the one that didn't want to leave your husband, and it's not my fault that he turned into an abusive prick. So Allison yells at her, stop saying mean things. Chelsea said, look, I thought we had something real, but we clearly had something else. So Allison tries to convince her, no, we were real. And it's the realest thing either of us have ever experienced. And so Chelsea reminds her, baby, I am with Madison now. I am in love. We've been together for at least a good 3 weeks now. That's love. That is love. Allison tells her, no, you know what? She's the one that's clouding your vision. That's why you can't see straight into my eyes. Okay? Allison is on this whole kick. She believes that, the longer she can keep Chelsea away from Madison, that she'll forget about her. And so Chelsea tells her, baby girl, that's not going to happen. And Alan says, it will. It will. Chelsea is just silent while Allison says, you know what? It's going to be fun to make you love me again. I still can't figure out who's worse. I really can't. All right. So Madison shares with the Duprees about Chelsea and Allison's history. And so Danny chimes in that Allison helped Chelsea realize what she wanted, which is what she found with Madison. She questions why Allison, would have a motive to hurt her daughter when she was the one that dumped her. And so Madison explains that Allison has changed and become a little unhinged. Okay. She explains how she's been stalking Chelsea and says when Chelsea doesn't play her game, she loses her. All right. Madison said, look, I believe she went away, but now I believe that she was just quiet long enough to plan this. So Anita asked Nicole for her professional opinion, and Nicole says, well, based on what Madison said, yeah, that sounds crazy, and y'all should be concerned. Anita asked Madison to, can you please repeat this for Vernon or whatever? So Nicole suggests to Danny that maybe they should contact, at this point, Nicole realizes that Danny is really struggling. And so she's like, well, maybe we should, contact the missing persons organizations. And that's when Bill shows up and he immediately, consoles Danny. Back at the little cottage cabin that Chelsea's locked in, Chelsea warns Allison, "Look, my family gonna come looking for me." And Allison says, "Oh, I already thought about that. I'm 2 steps ahead." All right. So she said, millions of followers means millions of suspects. So then Allison lets her know that, I created a fake profile weeks ago. Meet your favorite, your number one fan, Edie. And basically she did this to throw the family off the trail. So Chelsea warns her, but you do know the police can trace phones, right? And so Allison tells her, "Oh no, I'm good. And by the time they come looking for you, we'll be gone already anyway." I said, "Oh." Martin gets a text from Nicole letting him know that Chelsea is officially a missing person. So Martin is like, "Well, what can I do?" And Nicole advised him to stay at the country club should they need his help. So Samantha comes over and she's like, trying to figure out what's wrong. And Martin deflects back to their conversation about Nathan. Samantha tells him that, "Look, I think you're being super overprotective." So Martin says if it was up to him, she would never leave the house again. He warns her she's taking a step into the real world and that makes her vulnerable, not just to boys, but with this launch as well. And so Samantha stresses that, "Look, you cannot keep me from growing up." And Martin responds, "But I can prepare you. So I need your little ass to listen." Okay. Cause that's how we got, you think you know every damn thing. Okay. He warns her about the dangers everywhere and tells her that, he just wants her to be safe. And so that's when she keeps asking, like, "Look, I wish where's Chelsea at? Because I really feel like she would be on my side about this." Jacob finally spots in the boom boom room that there's some evidence that someone may have been dragged out. And so Kat thinks this means whoever took Chelsea was rather small because otherwise they would have just picked her up. And that's when Kat finds Chelsea's tablet and thinks that, hopefully that will be the key to finding her. Back at the Dupree house, Danny tells Bill that, there's a stalker, and Danny tells him about Allison and then says, "Do what you do, Bill. Do what you do best." And so Bill said, "So is it gloves off?" And Danny said, "Scorch the earth until you find my and bring my baby home." Back over at the crazy cottage, all right. Allison demands Chelsea close her eyes because she'll need the rest for what's to come. So Chelsea drifts off into another one of her hallucinations, and this time it's Bill. Chelsea finally decides to come out to her dad, and he tells her, basically never hide who you are. Bill then instructs her, "Look, please give me some time and play nice, get in her head." And then they go through these, defense tactics that he taught the girls when they were younger. And once she comes out of it, Allison has a table set up ready for dinner. And she's talking about how she knows all of Chelsea's favorite foods. That's when we find out that Allison has been crazy. Okay. It wasn't just the thruple situation. Allison says she's been following her since her first post. And I said, "Oh, that's real scary." So Chelsea's confused because she was like, "Well, when we met, you told me you wasn't really plugged in." And so Allison said, "Oh, girl, because I didn't want to scare you off. I didn't want you to know I was crazy." She said, "I'm your biggest fan." And now Chelsea's like, "Oh." And so she tells Chelsea, "And I felt that you made a map just for me. And I studied it." And so Chelsea's like, "So was there anything about you that wasn't a lie?" Now, Samantha is still questioning where Chelsea and Kat are. And Martin, at this point, he can't hold back no more. So he finally decides to tell her that, "Look, your cousin's been kidnapped." Jump back to the crazy cabin. Allison is still going on about all of Chelsea's likes. And then that's when she goes back into this hallucination. This time it's Anita letting her know that she just needs to listen to Crazy Eyes, learn, and adapt. She says her reach, her family, and her power will be what saves her life in the end, and tells her to remember who she is. When she comes out of this hallucination, Allison is sitting there professing her love for her. And Chelsea tells her, "You know what? You sound like a real psycho." Real talk. Kat tells Nicole to call Martin. And, he gets on the phone and he wants an update. So Nicole tells him, "Look, Kat wants to call off the launch party and basically just try to get everyone in that room looking for Chelsea." Meanwhile, Bill and Vernon seem to be working together using their resources to get the word out. And now Danny comes to talk to Nicole and says that, she wants to call Andre and have him handle the live stream. And Nicole agrees with her decision. And so Danny does it because, they just wanted to reach as many people as it possibly can. So once Jacob and Kat return back to the Dupree house, Jacob lets them know that the address for Allison was bogus. And so at this point, they're looking at other avenues. And Madison is like, no, we can't do that. We need to focus all our energy on Allison. Now, granted, she's right. Then Kat receives a crazy message from some follower by the name of Edie. Okay. Professing her love for Chelsea. And it's like, well, who the hell is Edie? So Madison said, ain't no Edie, girl. Don't be fooled. She trying to play with you. That's Allison trying to throw us off. And so then Kat notices it's a new account. And so all of them are like, yeah, that's if she had been following Chelsea she didn't just follow her 2 weeks ago. So Madison then tells him, I told y'all, Edie don't exist. I wish y'all would listen to me. I've witnessed the crazy with my own 2 eyes. And mine aren't crazy, So Anita goes to check on Danny to see how she's doing. And Danny is just like, I don't know how you're keeping it together while all this is going on. And Anita tells her, you know what? I'm just saving it up just in case you need me. You know what I'm saying? And she tells her, you know what? And you're going to need to save it until Chelsea comes home. So Vernon comes to make sure Bill and Danny got their press release stuff together. And he's going to go check up with one of his FBI colleagues to see if he can get some help. So Anita said she plans to go along with him. Now we see Chelsea really going through it as she goes back into one of her hallucinations. And this time it's Madison. She's freaking out, and Madison is reassuring her that, look, I'm with you. Focus your mind and find your way back to me. Gotta find my way back to you, baby. Sorry, I love me some Jaheim. Just then, Allison lets her know dinner's ready. And so she tries to kiss her and, toast to new beginnings. And I love when Chelsea gives her own toast and tells her that she is absolutely insane and lets her know that her family is coming before she throws a drink in her face and knocks over the dinner table. And so then that's when Allison's like, why are you acting like an ungrateful bitch? Okay. And she said, I'll decide when this is over. And that was the end of episode 119, y'all. All right, y'all. Let's get into episode 120. If you have not already, please make sure you hit that like button, y'all. Do not forget to make it do what it do. All right. Tyrell and Smitty are frantic once they learn that Chelsea is missing, and Tyrell just knows that something has gone wrong. So that's when Samantha and Martin return home, and Tyrell tells them, that where's Chelsea is basically trending right now. So they're asking for updates, and Samantha says, all they know is that they canceled the launch. And so Martin happens to be on the phone with Nicole trying to figure out, the ins and outs of everything that's really going on. And so he leaves the room to finish his call. And when Tyrell, who, won his trophy, is like, I can't even be happy about that because I really feel like something really bad has happened to, Chelsea. Allison is going off about how she works so hard to make things perfect because that's how much her crazy ass cares. Okay. And so Chelsea tells her, baby, this isn't love and you are a lunatic. And she said, this is more like a horror movie. And Allison tells her, that's what's wrong with influencers, always being dramatic. And she starts talking about how, this is their chance to reconnect. And Chelsea yells, you are a psycho, and kicks her to the floor. Okay. That's a good girl. Good girl, Chelsea. We see the most boring scene in the history. No, I ain't even going to say the history of Beyond the Gates. Let me take that back. Let me rewind that. We see a scene that was not needed. Caroline and 4H are at Haley's house watching movies. Literally, my notes say this was brutal. Okay. Then Haley makes a comment that, I wouldn't have had much fun if I was still pregnant. Who says that after a miscarriage? Maybe one of y'all out there in the comments can help me understand. The only way I would think someone would feel that way about losing a child is if they didn't want it in the first place or they were never really pregnant. But we can move on. So then, Haley thanks Caroline for being a good friend. And thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, but yeah, she thanks Caroline for being her friend because she was blacklisted by the Duprees. And then she tries to act like she doesn't, I don't want to be at they bougie events anyway. She said, I don't give a damn about their acceptance no more. So Caroline said, well, do you feel any type of way that Bill is with Danny right now? You know what I'm saying? You could be honest with me. I mean, it's safe space. You know what I'm saying? You don't feel no way? And Haley said, no, Bill has to co-parent, and I ain't trying to be that desperate woman trying to keep him away from his kids. Now, Vernon and Anita head out to meet their FBI contact, and so they're reassuring Danny that Chelsea gonna come home. Don't worry about it. So Danny is going through her phone of photos of Chelsea, and she tells Bill that she regrets being so hard on her, and Bill is telling her that no, actually, you were a really great mother in comparison to me, who wasn't very present, and says, I know Chelsea always felt like I've favored Naomi, but that wasn't true. I love them both the same. He reassures Danny, nah, you know what I'm saying? Everything's going to be all right. It's going to work out, and gives her a little side hug. And of course, that's when Andre walks in and peeps all of it. Now, Vanessa's down in Uptown. She's reading the news about Chelsea, and that's when Joey walks in. She has beckoned him for a meeting. She realizes she's telling him what's going on with Chelsea, and she realizes Joey doesn't give a damn. So Vanessa tells Joey, like, yo, we need to stop this, and said, Doug is in over his head, and I can't watch you keep dragging him under. And so Joey is like, oh no, but you like this. You like this, suspense and dangerousness of it all. And so she tells Joey, yeah, but you know, you're not like Diego or all the other guys, you're real and you're also real dangerous. And so Joey tells her, and that's what keeps you coming back. Okay. And so Anita and Vernon happen to walk in and they spot the two canoodling. And Anita said, and Vernon's like, I wonder what Anita, mind your business. We are here to worry about Chelsea. Mind your business. Just look the other way. So now Nicole is catching Martin up on everything that's going on. And she lets him know that Danny is, obviously thinking the worst at this point. And so Martin has offered his help by contacting his people at all the major tech companies. And Nicole is like, well, how are Samantha and Tyrell doing? And basically tells him, please keep them close for me. Martin then gets off the phone with her and he lets the Smarty family know that basically they believe Chelsea has been kidnapped. Jacob comes back to report to the family that the address Madison used at the hospital is bad, and so is the address that is attached to her insurance. So Kat says, look, we haven't been able to find anything on Chelsea's tablet. They just feeling like they're hitting walls at this point. And Madison brings up the fact that Allison was married. And so Jacob is like, married? Chelsea out here messing with married women. Okay. And Kat said, look, don't worry about it. We ain't got time to give you details. And so she's like, Madison, give us a name. Please give us a name. So Kat is then able to find Craig's IG and sends him a DM, right? So back at the crazy cabin, Allison is telling Chelsea that I'm trying to do things the nice way. Stop fighting it. Chelsea's like, look, you crazy. And so Allison warns her, you ain't seen crazy. I know it's a fork. It's not a knife. I didn't have time. But you get my drift, okay? Now, Nicole goes to check up on Naomi, who's working. And Nicole's like, is that really the appropriate thing to be doing right now? And Naomi's like, well, I have this client. She's a single mom with 3 kids, and they're getting ready to foreclose on her house. And Nicole said, look, I understand you wanting to help your client, but I think that what's really happening is that you feel powerless in this Chelsea situation, so you're exerting your control in another one. And I said, "Ooh, okay, Shrink." And so Naomi admits that, yeah, I'm unstoppable in court because, I can always find an angle and a way to win. And right now I feel useless in this situation with Chelsea because everybody got a job but me. And so then, she gets emotional that basically she can't fix this for her little sister. Back over at this conversation that nobody wants to see, Caroline tells Haley to call Bill. And so Haley's like, "Oh, I don't want to seem too needy, and he's with his kids." And so she's like, Girl, just pretend that, I didn't want to start a movie or whatever and have him come home." So she ends up calling, and that's when Bill lets her know that they believe Chelsea's been kidnapped. So then she's like, "Oh, well, babe, let me come over." And Bill's like, "Nah, nah, it's not a good time." And she thinks, "Well, I should be with you in this crisis as your wife." And so Bill tells her, "Look, it's not a good time. And I can't deal with you right now. I can't deal with your needy when I'm concerned about my daughter." So Danny comes over after Bill gets off the phone, and Bill says that he thinks Chelsea is gonna be able to get away from this crazed fan. And Danny explains, "Nah, it's a little deeper than that." And then she realized, "Oh, Bill, you don't know." And she said, "Oh, Allison is the woman who broke Chelsea's heart." Kat is still searching Craig's social media for clues, but she can't seem to find anything on Allison. So Madison tells her that she believes they've done this throuple situation more than once. And so Jacob assures them that, "Look, I got people working around the clock to uncover something." So that's when Bill walks in, and he's like, "Well, why, Madison, why are you still here?" And so she's like, "Oh, I'm just helping go through, Chelsea's social media accounts, whatever." And so he's like, "Oh, I'm just so happy she has good friends around her." And so Kat says, "Look, I heard back from Craig." And so Bill was like, "Well, who is Craig?" And then they tell him, "Well, that's Allison's husband." And so now Bill is really confused. He's like, "What?" And Kat tells him, "Look, we ain't got time to explain. We ain't got time." So she runs out. She takes Jacob with her. And Bill says, "I don't know what's worse, being powerless or really not knowing my own child." And Madison said, "Look, well, the second one you can actually fix when Chelsea gets back." And so basically Bill's just hopeful that he'll have the chance to do so. And now Anita and Vernon meet with this assistant director of the FBI, Mr. Buchanan. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really feeling Mr. Buchanan. In my eyes, he can really kick rocks. Um, but Anita makes it clear that they need help looking for Chelsea because him and Vernon are doing the small talk, and she's like, we ain't got time for that. We trying to find Chelsea. Y'all can reminisce another time." And so they're breaking down the details of Chelsea's case, and he's trying to make it seem like the Buchanan guy is trying to make it seem like, oh, Chelsea just got cold feet and decided to walk away, and so he can't investigate without certain details. And so Anita cuts this man off and said, "Look, do you have grandchildren? I just asking for a friend. Do you have grandchildren?" And so he said, "Yeah, I do. And I have some around Chelsea's age." And so she's like, "So you should understand what's going on." And he said, "Until I get something solid, ain't nothing I can do." And so Vernon's like, "Well, you know what? At least I know once we get you what you need, you'll be ready to, escalate the situation." And but Anita is not pleased at all. And you can see it all in her face. And she looked mad that Vernon accepted that for an answer. Back down at Uptown, Joey said, "Look, Vanessa, I ain't surprised that you want to pump the brakes, but I know that you just playing pretend, girl." And so he tells her that, you want the thrill without the consequence. And Joey says that his world doesn't work like her escort escapades. And so Vanessa was like, "I was so you being real cocky for a man that's getting turned down." And Joey tells her, "Look, you can run, but now that you had a taste, you're gonna be back. And I can't promise that I'm still gonna be interested." And so Vanessa said, "Look, I need to end this because I can't stand by and watch you destroy my husband." And Joey said, "I don't give a damn what's going on with Doug, but the problem is you've seen too much. And I don't do loose ends like that for real." So she's like, "Are you threatening me?" He warns her that they're gonna cross paths again, but they'll have to see if it's because she wanted to or because she had to. Now, Haley is going off to Caroline about the fact that Bill told her to stay at home. And so Caroline tries to get her to realize, well, that's how the Duprees operate during a crisis. And so Haley thinks that she deserves to be there as Bill's wife and Chelsea's stepmom. And when I tell you the way that irritated my soul, And she said it more than once this episode. And so she says, Bill needs her, even if he doesn't realize it. And so she decides to take her behind over to the Duprees. Craig meets Jacob and Kat down at Orphe Jeans, and Kat is just giving him the business, all the smoke, right? And she runs down her resume of who she is, who she know. And Craig said, "Look, I know who you are. Social media work both ways, sweetheart." So Kat lets him know that, look, Chelsea's missing and your wifey is looking a little suspect. And Craig said, "Actually, Allison is not my wife." And Kat's like, "Don't play with me. Don't play in my face." And Jacob said, "Well, actually, no, he's not lying. And it's been confirmed that he is not married." So Craig thinks it's a little weird. And he's like, "You know what? I'm ready to go." And that's when Jacob, Deputy Dogood, throws down his badge and says, "Sit your ass down." So Jacob lets him know that, look, I'm the police, all right? And we just trying to find Chelsea. So Craig admits that, yeah, I heard Chelsea was missing. That's the only reason I came up here, talk to y'all, and said that really Allison paid him to be a prop so he could go on these throuple dates with Chelsea. And so Jacob was like, "Well, would Allison take y'all back to the same spots to hook up?" And he was like, "Nah." Craig was like, "It was a different hotel every time, almost like she was being careful," and was given a little, single black female tease, and was always on Chelsea's social media. He says she made up stories and convinced herself that they were true. And so Kat asked, "Well, how did Allison find you?" And so Craig admits, "Well, you know, that ain't my main job, but my side hustle, I'm in the entertainment industry." Okay. Um and basically, no, he ends up admitting that he works for an escort service, which is owned by Joey. And so at this point, we could see that he's starting to not want to give as much information because he's worried about his job and his life. But he eventually does give up dates of when Allison called him and reached out to him to, basically pay for his services. Allison is still going off on Chelsea about the mess that she made, and how ungrateful she is. And Chelsea tells her that she needs to be in a straitjacket. So then she shows Chelsea some special bracelet that she convinced herself Chelsea wore to let her know that she was thinking of her. So Allison and so she's like, "Well, do you want an apple?" And Chelsea was like, "I'm not eating anything you give me." And so Allison's like, "Cool. We can just skip to the love making." I said, "Oh, I'd be real scared." We see Bill and Danny, and they're giving their plea to bring Chelsea home. And Tyrell and Samantha are watching, and they're super concerned. And so Andre is the one filming it, and he notices Bill grab Danny's hand. And so that's when Haley walks in and she interrupts. And so Naomi was like, "Why are you here?" And so Haley's like, "I'm here to be with Bill." And so Naomi is like, "Let's take this outside." But Haley's refusing. She's like, "No." And so Nicole gets in her behind as well. And it's like, "Look, baby, this is not the time, and this is not about you or Bill." And then, she's like, "Our family is currently going through a crisis." And so Haley tells them, "Well, I'm Chelsea's stepmother." And Naomi said, "You better not. That's that's what we're not doing." Okay. And she asked her, "Where were you when Chelsea was building her business or figuring out her identity?" And says, "You were too damn busy destroying our family." And I said, "That's right. That's right, Naomi. For what now you can speak. Now you can speak up, Naomi." So Naomi starts to get loud, and both Danny and Bill notice at this point. So Nicole advises 4-H girl, "It's probably good if you just exit stage left and go home." Okay. But she's being, a stubborn little booger. You know how when you had that one booger and it just won't come in. That's what Haley was being. You know what I'm saying? And so Bill comes out and tells Haley, "Look, bitch, I told you not to come over here. What the fuck are you doing?" And then he lets her know, "Look, we really need to talk because you are stepping over all types of boundaries." And so he pulls her to the side and he said, "What don't you understand about don't come here?" And so Haley was like, "Well, I don't like feeling like you ordered me. And, I'm here to support." And so Bill's like, "I understand you wanting to be supportive, but this is not a good time. And, you remember we are partially responsible for hurting these people, and the wound is still very fresh. This ain't the time, sweetie. But Haley mentions how, I saw you holding Danny's hand and acting like she was still your wife. And so Bill tries to get her to see it is not about you. We were two parents, worried, concerned, and terrified about our child. Don't nobody care about you, Haley. So Haley tells him, well, I feel like, I'm almost an inconvenience. And basically she had to beg him to let her, be by his side. So then Allison, it's crazy behind, comes in the room in a robin egg blue nightie that apparently she saw Chelsea in on a live stream. And then she even buys Chelsea a matching one. I said, oh. And she tells her, don't fight it. And, see, we're meant to be together. And I said, girl. And, Samantha's talking to Smitty, and she's like, you know what, Dad, you should be using your investigative journal skills to help. And so Martin says, well, look, I'm getting ready to go over to Vanita's to see what else I can do. And so Smitty is like, well, you know what, I'll go with you. And so Samantha asks, basically tells both of them, please bring Chelsea home safe. Now, Kat is like, well, you know what, I think we have everything we need to, basically trace this back and find Allison the information that, Craig provided to them. But Jacob tells her, nah, we still need a warrant. And, Joey has friends in the department. So Kat is like, oh, so all y'all must corrupt, huh? And so Jacob says, look, I'm going to make some calls, see what I can do to push through, but don't go nowhere. Kat said, soon as Jacob got on the phone, Kat said, no, my cousin can't wait. We ain't got time for warrants. And she dips. Then we end the episode with Allison trying to come on to Chelsea and kisses her, but then Chelsea ends up biting her lip, and then Allison retaliates. And that was the end of episode 120, y'all. Okay. It's a lot of craziness and a lot of crazy eyes. Okay. Okay. Please make sure, if you haven't already, that you hit that like button. Make sure that you comment. Make sure that you guys subscribe and hit the notification bell. Make sure you're following us on all the platforms. That's the TikTok, IG, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Eliminate. And yeah, y'all, I will catch you for 121 tomorrow and 122. I got 2 more to do. All right. And then I'll be caught up. And yeah, don't forget, members will be in our live tomorrow night, 8 or 8:30. Just like I said, watch out, have the notification bells on. So when we're going live. And yeah, y'all. Can't wait to see y'all tomorrow, and have a good night. Bye-bye.